if I tried to define the word dedication, it would be hard. But when I think of this next individual, I know of no one that is more dedicated and committed to the preservation of history, military sites, genealogy, records, than Dr. Acuff. I have worked with her personally for over 20 years. I know of no individual that is more committed. I know of no one that has spent more time and energy and effort at her own expense to help promote Sullivan County. So it is an honor, and I do it with respect and admiration, Dr. Nancy Acuff, County Historian.
Thank you, Dennis. I would like to say this, if this is part of credentials. I was born in Sullivan County. I lived in Sullivan County all of my life. When I go anywhere in New York, New Orleans, Frankfurt, Germany, or say France, people ask me where I'm from. I say I'm from Blountville. And they say, where's Blountville? I said, well, it's a little village on the Tennessee-Virginia line. And they asked me, why is it important? I said, first of all, because it's beautiful. And secondly, because it has one of the most interesting histories in the entire nation. And it does. This is an interesting place to be. And I always wondered my purpose, and I say this to Dennis, my purpose in being here, because I have been one of those people who I have actually said to God, why did you put me here? And in the past year, I've had my answer. I know why I'm here. And I know what I have to do. And we'll get it done. We'll get it done. We're on our way now. We'll get this done. I'd like to talk to you about the Battle of Blountville. And for the Sons of Confederate Veterans here, they're going to really enjoy what I say. Blountville was a Confederate town. Blountville was a Confederate town. It was and it is. Then you have to ask why. Why was it a Confederate town? One, because it was right on the border with Virginia. And it was not West Virginia. And although there were many Union sympathizers in the area, I think statistically, really in our northeast Tennessee, if you get right down to how many people enrolled in the Union Army and how many people enrolled in the Confederate Army, it was about half and half. It was a divided section. Facts scare some people, but those are the facts. Blountville, however, was Confederate. That was the sympathy, and it stayed this way. Now let's talk about the battle itself. Everyone in the area tried to get ready for the battle. They knew it was coming. They knew the Union forces were coming from Knoxville. People started hiding their valuables. My own family did the same thing. They were horse breeders that came here from Maryland. The main thing they had to do was go hide the mares. Now, for those of you who don't know what a mare is, that's a female horse. So, they had to hide the brood mares. They hid the stallions. They kept one workhorse out. Jim knows this story. At any rate, other families did the same thing. They hid all their valuables. Over at Thomas's Bridge, valuables were hidden in those houses. Everyone was burying everything they could find. At my own home place, a minister was living there at the time, and he hid the church treasury. And not only did he hide the church treasury, years before, being pacifist, his congregation had been paid in gold by the Hessians during the Revolution, and he hid a chest of Hessian gold. Now, can you imagine how many nights we sat up talking about that chest of Hessian gold and what we could do if we could ever find it? This is the kind of town that Blountville is. It is full of legend. It is full of stories. It is full of people. I I say who know their history. Once you make them start talking, they'll tell you what their history is and what their family did. At any rate, they were hiding all over. The Presbyterians hid their marvelous communion service down the well. Different things were hidden in different places, as we later found out. I'll tell you right at the end. All the physicians gathered in Blountville. I love this. We had locally a good number of physicians, and they came into Blountville and they headquartered themselves at the Presbyterian Church straight across from the courthouse and set up a little hospital. The Dairy Inn said they'd take all the sick and infirm. So my great-grandmother trotted up with her cousin, who had just taken over the Dairy Inn. It was then known as Kate's Hotel. And they took care of the sick and the infirm and the infants. They put quilts and cots on the dining room floor and took care of them in the stone portion of the inn. Everyone was ready, and the Union forces had gathered in the cemetery, and they rolled their cannons right in on top of the tombstones. I will not tell you but the truth. And they piled the cannon wheels right on top of the slave graves, because believe it or not, in our cemetery, the slaves were buried with the families, white and black. And just about high noon, the first cannon was fired, and it hit the courthouse. That was the target. There were several targets. That was the main one. The only courthouse in Northeast Tennessee to burn. Next main target was the Haynes home. Why? Haynes' brother was the Speaker of the Confederate Senate, but he held some very important papers. Papers that showed all of the seized property of Union supervisors. They wanted those papers, and they wanted them destroyed. Understand that? That's war. They were after those papers. They wanted them destroyed immediately. That was the target. So the battle raged on. It was between cannon from the cemetery and across this ridge and up along the byway in front of the middle school. The cannon were facing each other. It was cavalry, and the cavalry dashed down that hill and through Muddy Creek and up through the back, and the Confederate cavalry raced in the other directions, and the firing was in the middle part of the town. We still got a cracked window in the Dairy Inn, and we leave it there with great pride, where one bullet came through the windows. We said we'd never repaired that window, and we haven't. That's preserving your history, ladies and gentlemen. To just keep that window as it was. That battle lasted late into the afternoon, and the entire town was almost burned. A lot of the main stores. The courthouse was gutted, and it was not totally burned. It was gutted. There's a real difference. It was gutted. The smoke was everywhere. The tannery was destroyed. That was a major target because they had made saddles for the raiders. Mosby's famous raiders in the Army of the West was here. That was destroyed. Now, as I look back on it, and I've given a lot of thought to this, I'm going to say one thing. This is not in any history books. This is my conclusion. I think the main thing the Union forces were after was nothing but those records. I think that's why we were attacked. I think that's why we were attacked with such vigor. They wanted to destroy those records. Those were extremely important. It wasn't that they wanted to seize Zollicoffer, which is now Bluff City, and the railroad. That may have been secondary. They wanted those records. Well, by late afternoon, the Confederate forces wanted to spring a trap, so they removed themselves back toward Bluff City. And they stopped at what old-timers called Thomas's Bridge. People want to say now there was a battle at Hamblen Acuff. I don't know what they're talking about when they say that. All the old folks that I ever talked to when I was a child said the battle was at Thomas's Bridge. The battle was at Thomas's Bridge, ladies and gentlemen. That's where they fought. There was an entire contingent of Confederate forces there that were ready to surprise the Union forces. The Union forces discovered it. They gave them a small battle there, a rather vigorous one, however, and then we came back to Blountville. And finally went back to Knoxville. Very unhappy soldiers, and the Confederates equally unhappy. I frankly don't think anybody won that battle. They destroyed the town, yes, they said it was a Union victory. Right, maybe it was a Union victory with the destruction, yes. What was destroyed? Many homes, many businesses, and many people left Blountville. There was nothing here anymore. The railroad came to Bristol. People went to Bristol to live. Many people stayed. My family stayed, thank goodness. I'm glad they did. My great-grandfather was in that battle. He came with the Confederate forces from Virginia. Met my great-grandmother during battle. This is the romantic part, ladies and gentlemen. Fell in love while he was here. Came back after the war and married her. He brought the greatest family tree anyone could ever imagine. He was absolutely a fantastic gentleman of the Old South. As I say, Blountville was a Confederate town, and I'm proud to call it my home town. Thank you.
Here in my hometown, the place where I used to deliver newspapers from Hotel Topper to Ernest Weaver's store to Miss Caldwell here at the Dairy Inn and Doc Delaney at the drugstore. Is Tony Marion here? Stand up, Tony. He says, oh no. Every young man has somebody other than his father, sit down yet, that leaves an impression on his life. This man was a robust Marine in the 50s and maybe early 60s, I guess. Early 60s, yeah. And he taught me something about a thing called the Civil War. And quite frankly, Tony, I stand here today in front of all our friends and tell you, had it not been for you, I might not be standing here today talking about the Civil War. This part may not be about to become a reality. I thank you. The Lieutenant Governor and I often stop each other in the hall, and I'll say, can you believe two Blountville boys are standing here, the Lieutenant Governor and State Legislator, and he just shakes his hand, we're living the dream. But today, as we come in here, I was just remarking to him, who would have ever thought all the time we spent in this town, passing up and down these streets, picking up mini balls, and what do you call that, Tony? I've got the chest, the eagle. It's got the 50 caliber hole in it. Breastplate. And finding these things, realizing something happened, but not knowing exactly what it was. And then I recall a conversation that I had with my uncle on August the 23rd, 1959. You go, wow, how does Tony remember that? It's my birthday. I was 6 years old. And my uncle took me to the graveyard. He said, I want to show you something. I want to tell you about something. Got up there. He said, Now you see right through here, he said, the Confederate guns were up there on that hill, and they shot across town, and the ball bounced right through here and hit this grave marker right here, and there's a hole in that grave marker. I said, well, Uncle Earl, how did you know that? He said, well, my granddaddy, George Roller Shipley, was part of the Tennessee 19th. And he told me the story. Now let me skip around. I'm going to introduce our commissioner in just a second. And I'll have some more remarks in a minute, but I want to share why that's important. This summer I was at Shiloh. And I started out at Dawn in apprentice camps to the south, trying to figure out where the 19th Tennessee was in relation to the 3rd Mississippi, because they fought in that brigade, and I found it. I found where they formed up with the 3rd before they advanced into the peach orchard, to the Bloody Pond. When I found that spot, and I stood in the spot that my great-grandfather stood, and then I contemplated what happened just moments later, I thank God that my genetics even got passed on because of what happened at that battle. When I followed up through the peach orchard and around to the right of the Bloody Pond, I thought, what happened here? What had to happen to make a pond, one about the size of the Wagner Pond over on Island Road, what would have caused this to turn blood red and be called the Bloody Pond? And it occurred to me, here's the message. If men in blue and men in gray can set aside their differences just long enough to die together, surely to goodness, a nation can set aside its differences to become a greater nation. And we did. Well, someone has moved all my papers, Sheila. I can talk about the commissioner from personal experience, and I do want to say, oh, it's here. It's you that did it. When Governor Hamblen came into office, one of the best things he did was keep this commissioner. And we have told her, in no uncertain terms, that we love you and respect you so much. She brings so much to us. Now, she first came on the scene in 2003 under Governor Bredesen. And Governor Hamblen saw the wisdom in keeping another treasure that belongs to the state of Tennessee, even if she started her life in Chicago. Right? She has had a storied history her own as far as in marketing and being associated with Dollywood and a variety of other things. But her department actually is responsible for the marketing of tourism in our state, in which that's about a $14 billion industry. And in the state of Tennessee, it brings in about $1 billion in revenue, Mayor. And that's one reason we're here today. We want to see some more of that. Stop right here in your county. But without going through all this, I mean, it's important to honor somebody, but what the real honor is for this commissioner is the fact that she's out amongst us today, recognizing something that we have designated as important. And she sees the value, and she's going to bring her skills and her wisdom to this project to make it happen for all of us in Tennessee, not just Blountville. Ladies and gentlemen, my very, very good friend, Commissioner Susan Pettifer.